Hey guys, it has been a minute since we've done a video. I'm gonna try and make it up to you. Had a request about adjusting bent door hinges. Um, I did the video on adjusting doors, and that was simply from unbolting and loosening and moving. But there are a lot of cars out there that have weld-on hinges, or they have hinges simply put where somebody has backed up with the door open, caught the garage door edge, backed into another car, whatever, and they bend those hinges. Well, when you bend those hinges, a lot of people would just say, oh, we'll just change the hinges. 9 times out of 10, that doesn't fix the problem. So I thought I'd take a minute and try and show you a little bit about how to bend a hinge to straighten it. So typically what happens with a bent hinge, so if you back up, say catch the back of the door, it's typically not the hinge itself that bends. It's usually the cowl or the door frame. So I'm going to show you a fairly easy way to straighten that, and I'm going to tell you how it does it. You got to be careful, do it a little at a time. It doesn't always take as much. Sometimes it takes just a little bit of a bend. Sometimes you got to really push into it, and we'll go over that. But the easiest way for me to do this is to show you with the hinge that's out of the car. A lot easier for you to see. This is your typical set of hinges. This is an upper, this is a lower. Lower is the one that always has the spring. It doesn't matter, they both bend the same way. So when you look at this hinge right here, and so you can see it, this would be the cowl, and this would be the door frame. So that door opens this way. So what happens when you back up with the door open and bend it, the hinge bends out this way. So what it does, since this is bolted to the cowl, and it's just sheet metal, it will bend away from the cowl or it will bend the cowl. Sometimes it'll bend some of the door frame or it will bend away from the door frame. So what you have to do to straighten that, they sell a tool. It's a couple little discs on a wire. You don't need it. And I can't tell you what you're going to need until I see what kind of hinge you have. But here's a few odds and ends of things that different things that I use. You don't need all of them. You only need one. The most common and simple thing is a socket. Everybody has a socket. So this is your car door closed. When you open the car door, you have the hinge like so. You take that socket and you place it over that nut and against the wall of the hinge. You can't shut the door now. Okay? So once you've got it in that position, you're going to put pressure on the door itself and you will feel it bend. Now, most of the time it's just bending that cowl back or bending that door back to where it goes. Usually goes pretty easy. Sometimes you have to bend the hinge, but it's pretty rare. I mean, that hinge is, 3/16 to a quarter of an inch thick. It's pretty stout. Usually what bends is the cowl on the door. So basically you're going to stop that door from shutting with that pin and you're going to push it back. Now, there are things that you have to keep in mind. When the door is overextended forward, say you backed up and opened it, it will either make the entire door stick out over the fender or it will make the door hang or rise. Another thing that happens with a door that needs a bent hinge is sometimes that pin and bushing will wear out. And how many times have you seen a guy roll a window down, reach out the window, and kind of lift up on the door to open it because it's hanging on the striker? It's usually because of those hinges are worn out. See, that's another reason that you would bend them. We used to do it a lot on like 80s Camaros. They got this big long door and they weigh a ton. People hang on them and they start to hang. They start to bend down. So let's take for example. Let's use that. The door hinges are just plain bent down from weight of that door. So you want to raise the back of the door up. By doing that, you are going to bend the lower hinge. The lower hinge will raise the door. The upper hinge will lower the door. as far as that bend goes. So what you want to do, and here's some of the things, like I said, the socket, block of steel. I used an old gear from CV, maybe even a bolt. You can sometimes take that bolt when that door hinge, let's see, when that door hinge is open, you can maybe stick that bolt in here. It now can't shut. Okay. What you got to be careful of is you don't want to mess up your jamb, inside of your door, the door post. However, chances are it's already got a booger in it from bending it. Um, what you're going to do, you're going to open your door, roll the window down. Um, you don't want to take a chance of slamming that door shut to check it later if the door is too high and you break the glass. So if the window's down, you don't have to worry about damaging that door. The other thing I want you to do is find yourself a little wood block, and I just want you to lay it in the door jamb like so. Reason being, if for some reason that chunk slides out of there, the door slams shut. I don't want you to catch your fingers in the door jamb. Now, common sense isn't very common, so I'm going to explain something simple about pushing on this door. If you press in the center of this door, you're going to probably dent it. You're going to put a dent in there. So if you look at the edge of the jamb, that's where the pinch weld comes together. That's the strongest part of that door. And by pressing right here on the edge and the end, you won't bend that door. So what you're going to do is you're going to have this door open. You're going to put your uh, socket or whatever you choose to lock that hinge so it doesn't move. You're going to grab a hold of this door, maybe along the top, right here at the bottom edge, and you're going to press in. And when that hinge takes the slack out and it stops and it won't close anymore, you're now bending the door or the cowl, whatever's necessary. Now again, you're bending that top one, it's going to bring the door down in the back. You're bending the bottom one, it's going to bring the door up. If the door went open, backing up into, say, a door jamb, you're probably going to have to bend both of them. But unfortunately, there's no way to bend them both at the same time, so you're going to bend it down, and then you're going to bend the other one up. So you're going to do it slow, take your time. But sometimes you can just kind of lift when you're pushing on it. That will help that bend. But your bend, I can't stress this enough, your bend is the cowl or the door, not the hinge. Hinge very rarely ever bends. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but it very rarely ever does. But that's the simplest way to bend that hinge back and get your door. And you could start watching, the top here. Okay, all right, I got to go a little more on the bottom hinge to get it just a little bit higher, or the top one to get it a little bit lower. You'll start seeing that door pull in as that hinge comes in, because chances are the door is out beyond the fender. So it's not a difficult thing, but you have to pay attention to what you're doing. But that's typically the way to do that. And again, watch where you push on the door. Always make sure you got a wood block in there that for some reason that slips out and your fingers are in here and you're pushing, you're going to crush them. It'll be all over for your fingers, I promise you. And you won't be able to get that door open fast enough. But typically speaking, upper hinge, lower hinge, that's typically what bends. The cowl or the door frame. I hope that helps you. If you have any questions at all, put them in the comments down below, and I'll try and get it a little clearer. But that's the easiest way to bend door hinges. It's way more common than you think. People back into door frames on, backing out of the garage, the door's hanging open a little bit. It happens all the time. Worn pins and bushings happens all the time. Weight of the door hanging, very common. If you have welded on hinges and they're just plain worn, the only way you're going to straighten them short of cutting them out and putting a new one in. But the GM hinge is your typical hinge. But like I said, that socket, sometimes you can even usually put a wood block in there. You got a painted surface, you don't want to hurt it, wrap it with a little rag, you put it in there. But it is important to remember, you're trying to bend the cowl or the door frame. So you want to lock the hinge the outer flap to the inner flap. You don't want to hit the door or the cowl. You want the hinge to bend. You want to bend the cowl, but you want it to use the hinge to do that. So simply put, this is here. Let's say this is bent out like this, which is what happens. You want to lock that hinge so that when you push on that door using the door for leverage, it pushes that hinge into the cowl. Same thing here. If the door is bent out, you're going to push till the door frame bends. And that's how you'll get your door back into line. Pretty simple. Just take your time, pay attention to what you're doing, take some care to not hurt your hands. Hopefully that helps. Like I said, if you got any questions, please put them in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll keep them coming.